I have cracked the code to make these gluten-free almond flour pumpkin muffins that are light and fluffy, and it only requires this simple ingredient I bet we all have on hand. So I'll show you how. To start off, we're gonna do the streusel topping for the muffins. I do this first because it uses melted butter, and I think if it just sits for about 10 minutes while you make the batter, it clumps up and it makes it nice and droppable. For this, we're going to do 2/3 of a cup of almond flour. Add that to the bowl. 4 tablespoons of melted butter. 1/4 of a cup of chopped pecans. If you're not a pecan fan, leave those out. 1/4 of a cup of packed brown sugar, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and then just mix that all together in the bowl. Like I said, at first it'll be a little bit loose, but then as it sits, the butter re-solidifies, and then you'll be able to drop it onto your muffins as a streusel topping. So I'm gonna just move all this out of the way, and we'll start with our muffin batter. Pumpkin contains a lot of moisture, so first of all, I recommend using Libby's canned pumpkin. It's a little thicker and is not as watery as other brands I've found. So if you can grab this brand, I highly recommend it. For the recipe, you will need 1 cup of canned pumpkin, so you'll have some left over. I have some other gluten-free recipes that also, funny enough, require 1 cup of canned pumpkin, so you can use the other cup in those. I have some pumpkin cookies, pumpkin oatmeal pancakes, so I'll link to those below. You can check those out. So even though Libby's is a thicker canned pumpkin, I recommend doing this first before adding it to your pumpkin batter. So we're just gonna put this on a plate. Then you're gonna take some paper towels, and we are just going to blot out some of that excess moisture. You can see on the paper towel as I press down, all the water from the pumpkin gets soaked up on top. We're not gonna go crazy with it. We're not gonna be here all day doing it, but I go through about 4 or 5 rounds of paper towels just to kind of soak up that extra moisture. Almond flour on its own has a lot of moisture in it because it's just ground nuts, so it has a lot of that oil in it. That's why you have a tendency maybe to get those dense flat muffins, because it's just all that liquid is weighing it down. So we want to do something to combat that. So you can see as I'm doing this that less moisture is being absorbed into the paper towel, so then I think we are good. For the muffins, you'll need a large bowl. Everything is coming together in this bowl, so just scrape your pumpkin into the bowl. 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. Now for this, you're probably gonna ask me, can I use different sugars? Yes, you can use a different sugar if it's in granulated form. So like coconut sugar works, date sugar works. You could even reduce it slightly, but I wouldn't say anything less than 1/3 of a cup, just because then your muffins might have a tendency to get dry. 1/4 of a cup of oil, any oil you prefer. Almond flour already has a lot of oil, so we don't have to add extra to the muffins. And then just 3 large eggs. Just whisk all that together. Now we're ready to add the dry ingredients. Let's talk about measuring almond flour. It can be wildly different depending on how you measure it. So if you just like compress this in and pack it down, it could be up to 20-30 grams more almond flour than you need for the recipe. Some people like to spoon it into the cup so it'll be looser, so you would have a lot less. The technique I use is I kind of just mix it up in the bag, move it around, and then scoop it up and level it with a knife. Now, when you go to the printable recipe, I always include the grams with it. So if you like to cook the grams, which I kind of recommend with almond flour, I include that in the recipe link. So you need 2 1/4 cups of almond flour. You ready for the secret ingredient? Cornstarch. We all have cornstarch, right? If you're not a cornstarch fan or you can't use it for dietary needs, tapioca starch works in the same way. And why we're adding this to the recipe is to soak up that moisture, soak up the oil from the almond flour to make that light texture. I we'll just add a couple tablespoons of cornstarch or tapioca starch to the recipe. I do this with a lot of my almond flour baking recipes. I've noticed a huge difference with it. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. If you don't have pumpkin pie spice on hand on the printable recipe, I also include a substitution for that, which is just cinnamon and nutmeg and ginger. And then 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then that is it for your batter. This recipe makes 12 muffins. To divide muffins, I like using a large cookie scoop. You need about a heaping large cookie scoop full, and you're going to fill the cups about 3/4 full. Once the batter's all divided up, then it's time to put the streusel topping. So this is what I mean after it sits. So how it was before, how it was like loose and you can stir it. Now after it sat, I guess this is what I meant by droppable. And then just sprinkle these over the top. And as I sprinkle them over the top, I kind of just flatten down the muffins too. Bake these in a 350 oven for about 26 to 30 minutes. You're really gonna have to check to make sure that it's cooked through. I like to use a toothpick and kind of move it around through the streusel to make sure the almond flour batter underneath is baked and not wet. I also rotate the pan halfway through baking. This is the perfect fall treat to make right now. You can bake them, cool them completely, wrap and freeze for a grab and go breakfast idea. I have a ton more almond flour recipes on my website. Make sure you check out the recipe links below for more ideas, and I will see you in the next video.